Welcome back to Raised by Giants, where we talk all things spirituality. I'm Ryder Lee. In this episode, we have writer, motivational speaker, and researcher Brian Scott speaking about the reality revolution, out of body, and near death experiences. But before I introduce him, check out Raised by Giants on Rokfin. It is a completely uncensored platform. Go over there, set up a free account, get all of my regular content I post here on YouTube, and sign up for Rokfin's premium content, which is far less than a YouTube premium account, at only $10 a month. And you'll get all of my premium uncensored content when it gets released, and all of the other creators' premium content as well, like Beyond Classified, Charlie Robinson, Jay Dyer, Zero with Sam Tripoli, Tinfoil Hat, Eddie Bravo, and Rex Bear Leak Project, and much more. Check the link in the description to sign up for the video streaming platform, Rokfin. Also, check out C60 Purple Power. It is the most powerful antioxidant on the planet, helps with energy levels, skin problems, infections, eyesight, brain cognition, EMF radiation, and a lot more. It's a free radical sponge that gives your body the ability to heal itself. And if you use promo code GIANTS10 from the link in the description, you'll get 10% off your entire purchase. I highly recommend it. I've been using it for over a year with my own money, and I wouldn't recommend something that doesn't work. Brian Scott from Reality Revolution. Thanks so much for coming on my show. I've been looking forward to the discussion because I get to take this show with you back to my roots and talk about some spiritual things. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, so your channel is really interesting, Brian. You have a lot going on over there. What you've been doing this since what, 2013, I believe?
Uh, I've actually about 3 years. I think started my channel, but really it's been about 3 years altogether, 3 or 4 years. I lose track of time.
Absolutely. So, what I've watched and listened to of it, which involves an array of things: self-help, reality, manipulation, changing your consciousness for the better, meditation, Hemisync programs, which I want to talk about here a little bit later on with the
Yeah.
Monroe Institute. But where I want to start today out with is out of body experiences and near death experiences, because this is a very common thing that I see with some of the most prolific psychics and remote viewers in the world. Even some of the individuals that were a part of the Army intelligence and the DIA Stargate project had near death experiences or out of body experiences, also at SRI International, too. So, how does out of body experiences or near death experiences change the observer, or in some cases, unlock certain abilities that they might not even have had access to previously?
It's a really good question. I don't think we necessarily know. I can only theorize from what I've read about near-death experiences. I've experienced being close to death, but not an actual near-death experience. I think that we all experience a little bit of near-death when we go to sleep or when we're in super deep meditation. But obviously, it's a dramatic shift in consciousness in which the loci of the ego and the personality structure is significantly changed, which allows you to sort of escape from the prison of your normal everyday consciousness, and you become aware of the other astral realms or other densities of reality that are available to you. And that's why it's so significant when people have these experiences, because you don't normally or commonly do that. But I theorize and suspect that we can access those same realms while we're still in our bodies awake and not actually having a near-death experience.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I had something sort of like a near death experience once, and I was just in a completely dark, blank kind of room, but it wasn't scary. It was actually calming, and it actually gave me a lot of hope. And it was difficult for me to come back into this reality because it was so peaceful there. What was your near death or partial near death experience like?
I haven't actually had a near-death experience. I had an experience where I was almost killed, and it was more of a, inspirational or motivational thing where I should have died. So, I've spoke with so many really interesting people that have had near-death experiences. The common denominator is it's always transformational. In 99% of the cases, they experience a vision or have an event that completely changes their life and inspires them for the rest of their lives. There's definitely some commonalities to it. When you read the literature, there's some things that kind of shoot outside of it. The question is, what's really happening? Some people theorize that DMT is being released at the time of death, and it's simply a vision that we're having. I had a close cousin that was in a near-death experience, and it was very vivid, and he was being put through an obstacle course. Like, he had go through an obstacle course all the time, and then these angels said, "Are you ready? Do you want to come back? Is it worth it?" So maybe it was symbolic. I could go through list of different experiences of what has happened. I don't know if we can necessarily use the NDE experiences to create a determinative idea of what's actually happening on the other side, but it's indicative of something, and gathering that literature together, you can find some patterns that are super interesting. I'm most interested in what the law of one material says about that stuff. I find that it resonates with me when I read that literature. But it's all interesting to me, all of it. I mean, if anybody says they had an NDE, I'm reading everything about it, right? So
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, I had this theory a while ago that maybe, of course, it's just a theory and speculation, that whenever someone has a near death experience or an out of body experience, that would imply the consciousness separating from the body. And then, well, what if the consciousness that separated from your body, your consciousness, isn't the same consciousness that returns? So therefore you have a different outlook of life, and you want to, because a lot of people that the research and the study that I've done into NDEs and out of body experiences, they want to better their life normally, usually after it happens. I'm sure there's a few cases of people that, come back and they don't do anything about it. But I just thought that was interesting. Maybe it's not so much that you are coming back into your body. Maybe you bring a piece of another consciousness, or it's a different consciousness that enters back into your body.
one of the most fascinating concepts, and I have a couple episodes on this, is the idea of walk-ins, which are very commonly associated with NDEs. And a lot of times it's people that are at their wits' end. They've given up on life. They don't necessarily want to commit suicide, but they just don't want to, move on. In my research, what is indicated through channelings and other information and some interviews that I've done, oftentimes an agreement is made on a higher level by the soul with this other higher density soul that wants to use that body to continue a mission. Sometimes they commingle so that both spirits are together as they move on. Sometimes one spirit leaves, one spirit comes together. I've had experiences where I felt like I've shared alternate consciousnesses as I've explored different meditative practices. And, as I've been awakened to it, I think that there's certainly an element to that, where there can be a blending, but in some cases it can be a walk-in or a replacement. In other cases, it's just an open invitation for additional spirits or consciousnesses to enter the field of that person, and they're guiding them along as they move along. It's a fruitful territory for some beings that have missions, which they want to explore in expanding in the earth and the mission of changing the earth as we know it, right?
Have you induced a out of body experience through meditation, or been outside of your body, or ever astral projected before?
I have, and I have guided people in meditation to do it, and it has become easier and easier to do. It's super fascinating to me. It's taken me a long time. A lot of times I meet people that wanted to experience out of body travel and astral travel. Some people they do it right away, maybe by some sort of intuition. Some people can't do it and they give up. It's something that if you dedicate yourself to, like working out in the gym, that everybody can eventually do. And there are different levels to it. It depends for different people of how they experience it. The common thing in most literature is that you're attached by a silver thread. The silver thread is talked about in occult literature, in so many other places. Neville Goddard talks about it. And you have this experience where you leave your body, and through guided imagery and exercises, there's a couple of exercises. Let me see if I have that book. There's a great book called Mastering Astral Travel, where you can pull yourself out of your body. You can look at yourself while you sit there. You can go into the other room and see what the person has done. I've done this a couple times as experiments with my life, with my wife, when I knew she was like painting or she was doing something in the kitchen, and I've astral traveled to see what she was doing, and then I would find out later what she was doing to see if it was just in my imagination. I think there's different levels that we experience. The astral realm is one of the most fascinating aspects of the basis of reality. It's this area that is between all the realms. It's not necessarily a heaven or hell, but it's this place where we can travel, where reality's sort of grafted onto where we're at, where we can walk around and we can remote view. In some cases, you don't have to leave your body, but we can remote view. We can travel to different places. You can influence things. You can see different things. And as I've explored astral travel, I've been able to travel in the past, into the future. I've had questions, things that come up on the news, and I've used essentially what is a component of astral travel to go see if it was true or not. I've explored astral travel as a component of quantum jumping. One of the things, as you probably know, that I teach and talk about on my channel is traveling through parallel realities. And there is a variety of different techniques to do that. One of them is just astral travel, just traveling from this reality to another, and understanding the ways in which you can travel from one reality to another, and how realities work. But you're not really necessarily leaving your body. You're just leaving your physical body. Your body, as you understand it, has a lot of different levels. There's energetic bodies. And so when you're leaving the physical body, it's not like you're leaving your body. It's like you're putting on VR goggles and sort of changing your awareness or consciousness. Everybody experiences it differently. And I'm sure, and I've also documented researchers on my podcast about what they have said. And it's something that really can't necessarily be studied scientifically accurately, but has been to some extent. But there's always that sort of gray area. And I think that I believe that the veil between our subconscious is thinning, and I think the world is sort of changing. I think more and more people are experiencing out-of-body experiences more and more. One really interesting phenomenon, you hear people talking about the high-pitched noises. I keep on hearing this high-pitched noise all the time. And I have found through my studies that that's what the astral sounds like. So if you sit and just listen to this high-pitched, it's almost always there. You know how you can sort of ignore sounds that are generally in your environment? There's these high-pitched sounds that we naturally, with our consciousness, just kind of push out. But if you tune into it, it's one way to induce an out-of-body experience. There's sort of a pop that happens, and you end up out of your body. But I'm fascinated by it. I think that we know very little about it. And I really believe that that is the ultimate of future space travel. It's not spaceships. I think that we instantaneously travel to other planets once we enter into the next dimension, and for a while at the end of our current density. It's not about traveling through space. We travel in our other bodies anywhere we want instantly. And the more and more we verify this information, suddenly the whole entire universe is at our fingertips, and we can travel anywhere we want. I have also found the Merkaba light body is a powerful and effective means of out-of-body travel. If you start spinning up your Merkaba, and Drunvalo Melchizedek has a great meditation for that. I have one on my channel. But when you start, taking this exercise for a few days, spinning your light body, it becomes like a sort of spaceship that you're in, and you can travel around in on a regular basis. And you can go to different systems, different places, different locations, different planets. I could talk to you forever about it. I'm super fascinated by it. And there's some really amazing people out there that have been talking about it that are well beyond my level of understanding.
Yes, and I hope the secret space program and super soldiers were listening to you when you just said all that. VR goggles and
Yeah.
astral travel, right? That's what I really think is going on, and none of their experiences are physical experiences. But that's a completely different topic. Don't
We
really.
can talk about that topic now. I still believe that our even the little bit we know about the secret space program and those soldiers is still distorted. We're only allowed to know so much, and it's still, if there was super important stuff that we were not supposed to know about, we don't know about it. We have this general feeling that we know about stuff that's going on in that world, but we don't. We really don't. And the only way to really truly understand what's going on in that world is through really detailed remote viewing and out-of-body experiences. Most of the stuff that I read about is still, when I try to go and verify it myself, not as accurate as, but I could talk about that forever too.
Yeah, it's really interesting, and how a gentleman, not going to say his name, basically came out in those court depositions and said that none of his stories were real, they were fake, and that they were made up. And I've been searching for the answer of why these people believe that they're going to
Yeah,
space for 20 years and then age regress back. My first thought was that it was some kind of astral type experience and that it wasn't a physical experience. And then
right.
now it's evolved into some kind of VR simulation that they've been through. And then now I think that a lot of it is just completely made up, and that it's a story that's
Well,
been
the
put out
question,
there.
when you first heard that, when you were listening, to disclosure, cosmic disclosure, there's that little part of you that was like, yes, I'm so excited. I want this to be true. That's the biggest thing that most of us encountered when we started listening to that and the way it was presented, because finally, oh, it's this thing I want to be true so deep in my soul. There's a part of us that knows that there's something going on. But then, and then my immediate thought was, there's no way this program would ever be on and he would be dead. There's no way. And I immediately knew, as I went into my heart and asked about this, my higher self, which is something I'm learning more and more, is how to connect with my higher self and really get confirmation about things. I knew almost instantaneously that it was bullshit. And so I just avoided talking about it because I didn't want to, I had met people that were really into that, and I didn't want to take the energy from what they were doing. There was maybe something in it, even if it wasn't true. Another really interesting perspective about this, Neville Goddard and Joseph Murphy and others teach, there is no fiction, right? So I mean, they may be suspecting something from another life, another planet, that they're in the ether of thought that they're aware of, and they're tuning into it, and other people are responding because there is some reality to it. I believe that everything is real, like every show, even the weirdest story, all the realities are real. So there's this aspect to it, even if it wasn't, it's being created. And so a bunch of people started tuning into this, and this reality started to flower.
It became an egregore. They
Right.
turned it
It
into an
became an
egregore.
egregore that started feeding on itself.
Yeah.
I just wish it was true. A part of me wishes that there was something like that became true, because I had, obviously something, and I'm a huge science fiction fan. Like I'm the you have never met another one that is a big science fiction fan. I've read all the old golden age classics. I've watched every single movie. If it's science fiction on Netflix, I'm watching it. If it's in a different language, I'm watching it. So I love that stuff. That's a part of my soul that clearly feels like it's from some other place or has been in those environments, and it desperately wants to know. And I think that's the attraction. I think a lot of people are attracted to that information because there's something to it, even though the people can mislead us. And so you have to take it with a grain of salt, unfortunately.
I think it goes back to what you were originally saying, is the need to believe and the want to believe, and to
I
think
want
that
to
there's
believe, right?
something else going on that we don't know about. Because face it, Brian, we don't know what we're doing here, right? We're just guessing. Us as human beings, we have no idea what we're
Yeah.
doing. We're just kind of lost. We're just kind of placed here, and they're like, whatever the source or the creator, whatever you want to call it, has just been like, figure it out. you know, and that stems from us wanting to believe something, making it seem like it's real, and regardless if it is or not, right? And it's exactly the egregore, the egregore, or whatever you want to call it. That's what I believe that our entire reality is based off of. And whatever energy that we feed something, whatever thoughts, ideas, beliefs that we put into something, creates it in our reality,
Yeah.
regardless if it's an actual real thing or not.
Right. You can see it with all these groups that started saying, "Oh, I'm a super soldier," or what all the stuff, the blue avians and all that stuff. People saying they were blue avians or were formerly, it fascinates me to watch the response just as like a neutral observer. It's telling us something about ourselves, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
We're learning more about the nature of reality and just by watching that.
So you just brought up the being the observer. What does being the observer mean to you, Brian? What is how do you define being an observer?
I, like you, am a focal point of consciousness. And what we understand from quantum physics is that there is an observer effect. When the observer looks at a light particle, it can go from wave into particle at a simple level. So the observer has an effect on its environment around us. It's much more complicated, much more detailed than that. But you and I are both observers. And so essentially, we have godlike power to create the reality around us. And so any observer, when you start to understand this concept and start to play it through in your mind, then you can understand that groups of people that are observing have effects over our reality. You are changing your reality. So the question is, when you go into meditation and you try to ask yourself in the silence about the observer, who is the observer? Is it really me? Or is it something else? And so when I'm sitting there monitoring my breath, there's a point where there's this observer watching my breath, and it's different, it's separate from me. So the question is there one observer that's sharing our consciousness with everyone? And we're continually learning as we develop and understand and explore our own consciousness. But obviously it has power. But what does it mean to you? It's a question that the gurus will tell you their own interpretation. We're all observers, and we have an observer effect. So we create our reality as the observers, but who is the observer is the question I asked.
Yeah, is everyone the observer, or are there different categories of people? Are there followers, are there creators, and then are there observers, right?
It's a great question. I don't think I can give you the answer. My intuition tells me that we are all one being, individuated into different bodies, individuated as observers. We all have, and we're slowly over time learning that we are the same being, one individual being that's in different bodies. And so we are this observer. That's what my feeling tells me. Your question also gets along to the idea of, are there NPCs? It appears that we're in what has similarities to a dreamlike or simulation type of experience. If that is the case, then when you're playing a video game, the person that has controls, it would be the observer that's playing. And you can be in a game with multiple players, and they all have their own observer effect on the game. But also there are there are characters in the game that are not observers. They're just a part of the program or simulation. I've asked that. The Dolores Cannon talks about the backdrop people. I've done episodes and discussed it. Am I a backdrop person? I don't think I am, because I have free will and control over my environment. And there appears sometimes in my intuition, at least from far away, maybe I'm watching something on the media, that groups or characters, they appear not to be real to me, like they're playing a role in a drama, bringing something out of me. I don't know if that's true. Sometimes those are the thoughts that go through my mind. And the thing about the world that we're in, the simulation that we're in, is I believe there is a law of confusion. We're never meant to know the truth. If anyone starts to really understand that the game's over, we only have confusion. We can kind of suspect what's going on, but it won't. The simulation doesn't work properly if we know. So we can suspect, and I can give you my intuitions, but we don't know, right?
Exactly. Now you brought up something interesting, that you believe that we are all kind of one, that we all came from the same source, this same
Mm-hmm.
creator. Now, if we are all one, and I'm respectfully saying this, of course, why are we not all the same? Why am I
It,
not the same as you?
right.
Why are you not the same as me? Why am I not the same as the person walking down the street?
You can go back and look at what I believe what they're saying in the law of one is it's one thought. There is one thought for this round. I believe the universe is like a breath, and every single time the breathe in, breathe out, the universe is like a an experience of God learning about itself. And in this particular round of the universe, you can see an example that everything came to really one thought. You can look at a flower. There's a Fibonacci sequence there. Everything's becoming more and more individuated, more detailed. Even at the subatomic level, it reflects what's going on where we're at. And I believe that in order for God to understand itself, it's separated into as many infinite forms as possible, and then brings itself back together as we understand it. So if you notice, one of the key fundamental parts of this simulation that we're in is that everybody's separated, everybody's different. We were born into a world where everybody speaks different languages, they look different, they have different colors, they have different facial hair, different eye colors. It's so individuated. Everybody is like a unique snowflake. And so the creator is putting me through this simulation. I feel that within this realm where everything is different, I'm still seeing the commonality of the oneness of all of us. The more separated, the more beautiful the creation is. But at the same time, if we were all the same color and we all spoke the same language, the profound epiphany of our oneness would not be as intense. We're finding our oneness despite all of our individuation. We are put into this environment of separation on purpose. The more separated we are, the more different we are. We come to a greater level of understanding of this oneness. It's a lesson. It's a question. It feels like sometimes that we're learning, we're being asked a question, and we're testing something out as we do that. That's my own opinion. I'm still learning, but it's fascinating. When I go for a walk in the forest, I'm so fascinated by the variety of different forms, how many different roses there can be, how many different trees there can be. It's so remarkable and amazing. It can't be real to me. I'm just fascinated by the infinite variety of forms. But when we go to a fundamental level, it's all being created by the same light particle that's moving one direction or another within it all. So at one point when there was just pure oneness and nothing, it was this deep desire to move beyond that into infinite complex forms and then understand itself in this way.
I agree to a certain point. My personal opinion is I don't believe that we all are one. Now I do believe that we are all connected, right? My personal reality that I've created is not affected by, or should not be affected by, your thoughts, ideas, and beliefs, or anyone else's thoughts, ideas, and beliefs, or even actions, right? Unless you're physically harming me, I'm solely responsible for myself as an individual. Now, I can feel sorry for you, or I can, feel sorry for a poor child in the Congo starving. Yes, because
Mm.
I'm very empathetic, right? And I realize that just a little change in my existence here, I could be that child, or a homeless person is on the street is another example, but that's just creating karma, right? And does that starving child in the Congo or that homeless person on the street affect my day to day life? No, it doesn't, and it shouldn't. And my thoughts are that if you're affected by people that aren't physically harming you, then you're just creating karma and resentment within yourself. I don't believe karma is a law. I believe karma is a
Yeah.
self-imposed system using regret and resentment to keep the karma train going and perpetuating itself in a never-ending loop. Now, I'm not saying that you can't be there for people that are going through a hard time or whatever, because we all go through hard times. It's just a part of being here, right? It's a part of the experience.
Right.
But not letting that person or situation drag you down with them is
Part of
the
what we're
important
going
thing.
through in this simulation is understanding that. And part of the understanding is that everyone is a reflection of myself. So when I see that going on, there's a part of me that doesn't want to identify with that doesn't want to identify with that suffering. But when I do, and I acknowledge that that person is me, I start to become empathically linked. If somebody's starving or somebody's struggling, and I separate myself from them, that is a level of consciousness I can be at. When I connect with them, I see myself in them. I look out through their eyes. The more and more I connect with the oneness, the more and more the part of me that doesn't want to be connected to everybody is not it goes away. What I've found is I can influence others with my own thoughts if I am thinking about it in myself. If I imagine for you that you're a millionaire, I'm imagining it for me. So if I imagine terrible things for somebody, that those negative thoughts are not going to really affect them. But if I'm imagining good things for them, it will, because there's a part of you, I see myself in you. There is a unique solid link that I can show you that we are one. And if you, the best place to look at it is Secret of Light. I read it on my channel. Once you understand protons and electrons are the same light, when you understand essentially the solar system is just an experiment by the sun, which is a living being, which is basically putting us through this, that all the light and all the beings and everything in this entire solar system is just the same light. And when I understood that, there's a part of me that doesn't want to be in that oneness or affected by bad stuff. But when I identify with this link, there is, of course, a part of you that's completely different than mine. You have had different experiences. You were born in a different place. You and I have different experiences. But there is a part deep down that is vibrating light that comes from the same source. And when I have identified that, then I realize that you are a reflection of me. I'm a reflection of you, of what's going on within me. And I start to see it. Reality starts to communicate with me. The people I meet are essentially reflections of different states or questions I have in my mind. And it's the same with you. And then I understood the oneness. That's how I was able to get to that point of oneness. It's different with everybody, but I get what you're saying 100%. So
No, and I agree with that statement. I just think people toss around that idea of we are all one without explaining it the way that you just did. And I think that this reality would be really boring, Brian, if we didn't have that individuality, right? If I didn't have my own experience, you didn't have your experience, and we were all just kind of like robots going about the same exact thing and doing the exact
right.
same thing, right? And I think that that's what some people look at, what when people say we are all one, that's what they kind of uh, think is going on, right?
Right.
That take individuality out of it, and we're just like we would just
Most
be
of
robots in
right.
this.
I agree. Most of the individuality that we experience is just our ego and our personality shell. It's temporary. But while we're in our body, we can't help it. Our body wants to live and it wants to be in this environment. So we create an ego that identifies with the experiences and feelings that we have. But if we were, that's the thing a lot of people experience with different psychedelics. When the ego sort of goes away, they see the oneness. People report that with DMT or LSD or psilocybin experiences where they feel their ego kind of goes away and they experience the oneness and they can't quite explain it. And so, yeah, there's absolutely levels to everything. But right now we're in a most of what we experience is individualized, but there is a part of us that's still linked to that oneness for sure, I believe. And we're not robots. I don't think that it's like a Borg experience. It's a great question because you watch Star Trek and the Borg. We don't want to be the Borg where we are the collective and we are all one, that would not work for me. What Ra explains in the law of one is the social memory complex, which is where I think we're getting closer to that point where it's kind of like an internet. We can access the internet and we get access to all the stuff that's going on the internet. We access our consciousness together while we're in our body. We have access to all the memories, all the experiences, everything that's ever happened, and we have this dual consciousness where we're connected. That would be the next level of consciousness to me. That happens over time as we expand and connect to this oneness. The law of one is what they're saying, is that there is a law of oneness, but we don't understand it. And it takes us literally in our incarnation billions of years to understand this oneness, right?
Yeah, that makes sense. So, are you under the impression that because there's a theory that Dolores Cannon came out with that, well, I don't know if she was the first one, but she's one of the first people that I heard talk about it. So I'm just going
Mm-hmm.
based off of my memory that every decision that we make, every choice that we make, then creates a alternate timeline or a parallel timeline where we actually did the opposite, or we did that thing that we were going to do, or we didn't do that thing. So then if that's the case, then that would mean that there are literally multiple timelines, multiple parallel realities that are just right outside of our field of reality, just right there beyond the veil. Are you under
Absolutely.
the impression that that's the way that it works too?
Yeah, that's something I explore in my book, where I felt like I experienced a parallel reality and went into the science of it. Quantum physics has established this possibility. At a minimum, when we look at reality transurfing and their model of parallel realities, you can accept that there's at least an information field that carries the information of those possible realities. Just like if I had a basketball and I bounced it, there is the potential of that, where that ball will go in the light pattern in the information field that I'm around, and then whatever proceeds to happen. So right now there is an information field of what will happen after this interview is over. Now the question is there an actual physical reality that occurs? I tend to believe that there is. It will probably be difficult for us to ever identify, but I've explored them through my own consciousness, and I have quantum shift using quantum jumping into realities that were different than mine. I've discussed this on my channel where I had objects disappear, I had people show up and disappear in my life. I've even had where I lived was different. I've had buildings disappear. I've had objects disappear at a point where I felt like I was going insane. When I had my near-death experiences, I felt like I was immediately shifted into a reality, and there's a real possibility that I'm dead in that other reality. And I've had to come to grips with this spiritually for a long time. It's one of the reasons I have my channel. I'm trying to understand: am I insane? Go to a psychiatrist, because I have physically experienced the parallel reality dimension phenomenon, not theoretically. It's something I've experienced, and after I experienced it, I started to find ways to consciously explore other parallel realities, because obviously there's a reality where I can be successful. There's a reality where I can write my book. And so at first I was fearful of it and my own sanity. Then I embraced it, and it became a means to further explore the reality that I'm in. I really believe that there is a vast multiverse that is potentially available to you. You can meet your twin self in these other universes. The best place to truly understand it is in meditation. But I believe that if you're a doubter, you can go to the quantum physics, and there's some incredible authors, incredible quantum physicists and physicists in general that have explored the many worlds theory, all the aspects of it. And I believe that it still hasn't been disproven. It just depends on how it's actually working, right? But I'm a big believer in that, and I think the best way to prove it is experience. You can experience it if you use techniques to shift into these realities.
So if there's all of these different realities and different parallel realities all around us, and we could shift into those different parallel realities and alternate dimensions or alternate realities,
Mhm.
how would we know which one is the best one to be in? We wouldn't,
there
right?
there is not necessarily a best one. You can create in what I've found more and more is I am trying to find that happily ever timeline where I combine a bunch of elements and then I explore them. I have, as I teach in my aura program and others, I explore potentials in meditation. What are the potentials for me in my where I find the best love available, the greatest health, the greatest wealth? And I explore these potentials, I combine them, and I find this one beautiful timeline that I work towards and vibrate towards and affirm. And if you do the right work, there is one that and then as you do it, you maybe change it as you go along. Maybe I thought at first I needed to have a mansion, but I realized I don't really need a mansion. I just a nice house, and that's going to be too much work. Or I adjust it. I don't need to have that Camaro. I'm pretty happy with my Navigator. You can adjust it, but eventually you find yourself on if you do it properly, you're like on a river. It's pushing you along, and all of the different realities push you along into this one really powerful reality. When I can see it when I'm in meditation, it's like a mountain. It's like this pinnacle, this place that I'm at in the future. Essentially, I think we're kind of like time travelers. So we can travel into the future of future timelines, and then we can explore the information that we get when we talk to ourselves in that place. And then we can come back and we can invest in the right stocks, we can eat the right foods, we can meet the right people, and we end up going there. Is that the best place? Who knows? It might not be, because it's all a matter of choice. The beauty of this is I believe that it's a multiverse of choice. I believe that we're going to become even more advanced. I've explored grab avoid codes. I believe that it'll be like a phone book. Like I want to have a reality where I have long hair and I can type in the number and I can go there. I want to have a reality where I live in Oregon. I live in California. Okay, I can type. It'll be literally like this amazing advanced multi-computer, and we can instantly enter it in. And that's what the next level is. It's just like this beautiful game where we can choose any environment, any place, and we're just at the cusp of it, understanding. It's very simplified, it's feeling oriented. We're kind of right now driving in a car in the dark with headlights that barely show us just a little bit of ways ahead of us. And the more and more we'll get better ways of surveying our surroundings and exploring different futures and timelines that are available to us.
It's interesting that you brought up the like flowing like a river, because I recently watched your most recent video titled Neville Goddard by Water and Blood. And I found that very interesting because he's talking about nothing can be created besides out of water and blood. And I found that super, super interesting because in the book of Genesis, it talks about God separating the waters from above from the waters below, right? And with that implies outer space is also water, and this reality is water, and we flow in
Yeah.
this reality as water. At least we're supposed to flow in this reality as water because we are water. So I guess my question would be is God, would God be considered water since it's all around us, it's beneath us, it's above us, and we're made up mostly of water?
I just love that theory. I love thinking of that. And if the fish that's in water does it know it's in water? I mean, we're in an environment, and it may be just a certain level of density, which is what they talk about in the law of one, density of water. We're just not aware of it. And so yeah, water's all around us. All water is in us. It makes up what we have to drink it to live. It's a part of our environment. Certainly water has that element of the creator. And I believe that it may be the key element of life, but who knows? Maybe there's planets out there where life exists without water. But I do believe that water has this spiritual element because it can be frozen into ice, it can be turned into a gas, it has different densities, and because of its nature, I think that light is like water. and it flows like water. And maybe it's just an advanced form of water. Obviously, water is made up of that light. So it's very similar, or if not the same. I love that theory. Yeah.
And then there's also too that what it's proven several times by Miyamoto's work and others that have done the work that water has memory, right? And
Right.
we're basically on a water-based planet, and we were just talking earlier about this infinite data field that's all around us. What if that information and that data is being stored within the water? So if we didn't have the water on the planet, we wouldn't have
Yeah.
this information, limitless information data field that's collecting all this information around us.
I was fascinated when I was watching Matthias De Stefano on Gaia, and he was talking about how in our past the giants were here taking care of the planet, and they took care of the water because it stores the information. And if it is, like, I think it's holographic, so it carries all the information in the tiniest particle, just like we are. And I do think that water is that fundamental element that's been a part, and I'd love to know more someday, for sure.
Yeah, it's really interesting when you get into the discussion about water and its influence upon us, because also Neville Goddard talking about blood and water, and that could have been our inception on this planet had
Yeah.
something to do with the water, and some kind of DNA supplanted into the water, and then it kind of evolved into what we
Yeah.
are right now, which I think
Absolutely.
is just a very interesting theory, and it sparked my mind and my thoughts whenever I was listening to that
Yeah.
video that you did.
I think that reality is like water, and that it hardens. If we see it in our eyes, in our mind's eye, it has a different phase. And if we continue to focus our thoughts upon the reality that we want, it starts to harden like ice does in water. That's the element that I feel when I use reality creation techniques. Water is a good way to look at it because it has these different phases to it. So yeah.
Yeah, and if you can manipulate water, and if water has a memory, just like people have done those experiments with rice and stuff, they'll take a bag of rice, put it into a room, and then throw nothing but negativity and harmful words at it
Right.
and curse words and stuff, and it decays. Goes bad really quickly. But then when you take
Mhm.
another bag of rice into another room, you go in there and say nothing but loving things to it, it stays good for way longer, right? And I think that that's an example of what we've been doing to ourselves, right? Because if we are made up of water, we're treating most people, I believe, are treating themselves badly, right? They're not giving themselves the right kind of information. It's constant negativity being hitting them, and
Yeah.
whenever they're being hit with that negativity and they're talking bad about themselves, or they're listening to horrible messages, or watching things without realizing what it's doing to them, it's collapsing in upon themselves. It's affecting their energy field around them, and it's negatively affecting their biometric layer of their being, which is water, right? And it's putting
Absolutely.
codes into their being made up of water, right? And if water
Another
has
thing,
memory.
yeah, I have another episode on using water to quantum jump, and it's one of the most powerful things. If I start taking water and I put an intention into it, and I can even use certain magic words or vibrations, and I drink it every day. Over time, it's one of the most powerful techniques I've found to shift my reality. And another thing is I started to become aware of is that when you just drink water that you get from the store, you're drinking the person that put it up on the rack, it's probably that person's emotions, or maybe they're mad at work or whatever. If you can cleanse or get the water moving or something. So I've become conscious about anything that I have, that even food that has water in it, I try to add my own layer of intention or cleanse it if I can. And I felt better. It's improved me. It's made my world better. And we don't realize that we're taking in the negative thoughts of others around us by the water that we consume, right?
Exactly. And then, the pollution of the water. If you're polluting the water, you're polluting the rivers, you're polluting
Right.
the oceans, and water is memory and it's holding all of this stuff, then you would be polluting our memory and polluting the infinite data
Correct.
field that's all around us, too.
And that's a reflection. That's the mirror reflection reflection because I'm polluting something inside, and it's just the world showing me what I'm doing to my inside, that that's what I see when I see that. But yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's wild when you think about it. And us eating foods like the you were saying that have pesticides on them, they got all kinds of chemicals on it. Even fruit, vegetables, things that you buy from the store, the water that you drink is would also be polluting our memory because we're made up of mostly water.
Yeah.
I think that that's a really big uh, theory that people tend to surpass or don't even really think about.
No doubt about it.
That the water influences us. The water holds memory. The water is holding this infinite data field in place, and whenever it gets polluted, also we get polluted. And it could be a reason why we come in here with very little memory, and we don't know who we are. We don't know what we're doing. We're just kind of stuck here, and we're like, hey, figure it out.
Yeah,
you know
for sure. I agree.
Really quick, I forgot about to talk about this earlier, was the Hemisync program. We got a
Yeah,
few minutes before I let
sure,
you
of
go.
course.
The Monroe Institute Hemisync program. How has that worked for you? Have you been able to use that to well, first explain what the Hemisync program is, because I don't think very few
Right.
people know what it is.
Well, the Hemisync is a particular program created by Robert Monroe. You can learn a little bit more about it in my episode where I read the CIA disclosure on where they talk about this particular technique. Hemisync is a powerful way in which you can induce remote viewing and other astral experiences by using certain frequencies and combinations of frequencies, which they researched. And I found it to be very effective. I believe that document is so old that it's so much more advanced now. I think that YouTube has so many amazing musicians and people that are experimenting with different sound frequencies. I think that was just the beginning. I think that we're getting a more fine-tuned ability to understand the effect of frequencies in meditation. And I'm always exploring those in my meditations as well. Synchronizing the Hemisync also kind of focuses on synchronizing the different spheres of the brain, which is an important technique, and I've found that to be something I've adapted and added into my meditations. I believe that there is fertile ground in the future for meditators to continue to actually research the power of different frequencies and techniques to speed up or more efficiently take us to different levels of reality, different levels of consciousness that awaken us to do new realizations, that give us new powers. We become psychic. We have control over objects. I think there's amazing things on in the future. Hemisync was the very beginning of that. So, if you read that CIA document, you can see how they were able to come up with the Hemisync program and how effective it is. I'm super fascinated by it. What has your experience been with it? What do you think about it?
Well, I've been doing a little bit of research into it and trying to figure out, how exactly this document got declassified, because the Army intelligence was involved with it. The CIA was also involved with it. And the Army intelligence, I believe, wrote a report and started working with the Monroe Institute in 1978.
Right.
And then somehow the CIA got involved, which is interesting because 1978 was a year before the Stargate project officially became a special access program, and where they were researching psychic abilities, ESP, remote viewing, and channeling, and all of that. But then in June of 1983, the Army commander, Wayne McDonald, I believe, was asked to give his commander an assessment of the psychic services provided by the Monroe Institute. And then again, somehow the CIA got involved and did their own report, which I'm not for sure if that's the same report. They got the report from Army intelligence and then declassified that, or if the CIA wrote their own report. But apparently it got declassified in 2003, but there was like a page or something missing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that history of it, because that was my question too. Why was this declassified? And what other, obviously, if this is that far back, did they give up on the program? Obviously, I don't believe they did. What I mean, for the minimal amount of cost, what better way for us to spy on our enemies
Yeah.
in order to develop the remote viewing that they're talking about, using the Hemisync as a basis or beginning? So why not? I mean, what do they have to lose? We spend millions of dollars on satellites. We have entire departments and programs. If you can have somebody sitting in a room that can say what Vladimir Putin is doing right now, like we know what exactly he's doing, why wouldn't we be doing that? Are they saying that it doesn't work? We have seen from the Farsight Institute really powerful evidence that the remote viewing works. It works in my life. I've used remote viewing, and the better I get at it, the research shows if the remote viewer doesn't know what they're remote viewing and they're not bringing in their own opinions or judgments to it, it's more effective. So they developed a program, and I really want to know what they've discovered. For instance, if you're good at remote viewing, you can remote view different futures. You can remote view going to the Akashic library, and you can discover viruses. You can discover biological weapons that are available from those different futures, and it become a resource where dangerous technologies and different weapons can be acquired. And if other people are doing that, why wouldn't the United States be doing that? So the question is, what has been done? And of course, they're not going to tell us, because they classify everything if there's even the tiniest doubt. And hopefully someday somebody will come forward and they'll talk about it. Some people kind of have, and you have to judge yourself whether or not you believe that they are accurate or not. But for me, it's 100% that it's been done. What have they discovered? What are they doing? Have they learned how to block it? Do they have like remote viewer warriors that are standing outside of the Pentagon that are blocking stuff? Is there some sort of advanced protocol or understanding of remote viewing that is integrated into the intelligence services that we have no clue about? I would love to know that. That's what I would be fascinated by, for sure.
Well, I've done a lot of study into it, and I don't want people to get mad at me here, so I have to, make a comment, because I've, interviewed quite a few people that were legitimately a part of the Stargate
Right.
project, and the Monroe Institute wasn't involved in any kind of remote viewing. There were two separate.
They were just at the cusp at the very beginning of it.
Right. Yeah, the Monroe was more about inducing a out of body experience. Now, some of the people in the unit during the Stargate project, the DIA and Army intelligence during the Cold War, they did have access to some of those tapes by Robert Monroe, to the Hemisync tapes, but they were two completely separate programs.
Yeah.
And that's where things get a lot of confusion comes in, because there's the Gateway project, the Gateway program that was done by the Monroe Institute. And some people that were a part of that program thought that they were a part of the Stargate project. And then
but they weren't.
So it's really muddied the waters between all that. So I just,
what I've read, I agree with you with that. I just think that was clearly the beginning of intelligence using consciousness research, and they were just exploring out of body experiences. My mind goes to all the different other possibilities that are available. So yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Just like you were talking about with astral traveling, being able to influence different realities, able to influence other objects and other realities. I think I undoubtedly believe that remote viewers have that ability to be able to influence certain outcomes, be able to influence certain people.
Is there technology available? This is, I suspect, where people can kind of predict the future, even through quantum computing or through advanced or combination. It's not 100%, but they can kind of see like the probability of certain probabilities, and you see people investing, and even like doing certain court things or being challenged by court. You see certain people in the media or leaders that you think there's no way they would get away with that, and it's like they know the future. I see different people that are involved in different programs with this understanding of the future, and that might be another program as well. I don't know.
Yeah, it could be a really solid example. But thanks so much, Brian. I appreciate you coming on my show. Was there anything else that you wanted to touch on? If not, let people know where they can find you online or purchase your book. Actually, talk about your book a little bit, because this is really interesting.
Well, I have a book, The Reality Revolution, The Mind-Blowing Movement to Hack Your Reality, and I talk about a lot of the stuff we've talked about and tell about my own personal experience. But I'm super excited. I've finished in the final editing phase my second book, which will be the New Earth Field Manual, and I also discuss a lot of the stuff we talked about, what the next level of consciousness is, what's happening to the Earth, where are we moving to, what the new Earth actually means, what my higher self is, how I communicate with my higher self. So, keep an eye out for that, and keep up the great work, man. I really appreciate your podcast. You've interviewed some fascinating people, and you have unveiled a lot of what's going on in the world. And I appreciate that. You're doing great work, man. Thank you.
Thanks so much, brother. I highly recommend Brian Scott's work. The link will be in the description of this video. Go over there and check that out. For everyone else, thanks for watching and listening. Much love to everyone in the chat. Please be sure to hit the thumbs up button, help the channel and the YouTube algorithm. Share, subscribe, hit the bell icon as well for notifications. All of my links to all of my information is in the description as well. And remember, we're not only in a spiritual war, but a war on humanity. Stay aware, stay alert, keep loving your heart for everyone. Stay safe out there. And if you can see through the illusion, you are the solution. See you guys next time.